everyone. My name is Jonas. Welcome to my talk about Subnautica. I'm very happy to have a really full house today. I'm here basically to inspire you, to give you a different perspective on how we make games, because I realized we make games very differently than they are usually made. So I hope this will be interesting and informative and maybe give you a different perspective what you can also do. So let's start. First of all, what is Subnautica? Subnautica is a first-person, single-player underwater adventure. And you crash land on an alien planet. You dive in and scavenge resources. You craft and build to survive. You construct tools and vehicles. And you pilot the vehicles, and you build habitats, and you make them your own. And you bring your vehicles into your habitats, and you explore an open world full of diverse biomes, caves, threats, bigger threats, mystery, more mystery, spectacle, a lot of spectacle. You unravel the story by going down all the way to the core to discover the secret of the planet, and then you blast off back to Earth, the end. The entire experience takes about 30 hours. Sorry for spoiling it. So, like I said, Subnautica is a first-person, single-player underwater adventure, but it's also an open-world exploration and sandbox survival game with a story. Let me unravel that for you. But let's talk about Subnautica as a product first. So, Subnautica was released on PC and Mac earlier this year at a price point of $25. I'm not sure, it's maybe 30 now. We sold 2 million copies. And we had 50K concurrent players on launch day for a single-player game. It's pretty nice. We got a 93% positive user review rating at about 70K reviews total. I think those numbers have gone up. And a 87% Metacritic score. We're currently working on bringing Subnautica to consoles and other platforms. I think it is out on Xbox and PlayStation today, or like yesterday or tomorrow. It's right around this time. Subnautica was commercially successful, but how did we build it? Let me take you behind the scenes. So it all started with a plan. We wanted to make something small for a change, maybe in Unity, perhaps a casual game made by a small team of 4 people in about 6 months. In reality, we ended up with a big project, still using Unity, targeting beefy hardware made by a team of 25 over the course of 5 years. And that cost us $10 million to make. How did that happen? And where did all the money come from? Let me show you. So I'm going to take you all the way from the rough idea to early access, to the launch of the final product. I'm going to show you what we learned in the process, the major changes we made along the way, and what makes Subnautica stand out. And I'm going to show you how we work as a team and how we interact with our community and how we do marketing. And I think most of these things are very different from what you're traditionally used to. If there's time at the end, I have some practical tips and tricks you can use in your own products. Let's get started. Start with the idea. So our company, Worlds Entertainment, is pretty small, and we are indies and we don't have big money. So we cannot compete with AAA. Instead, instead of competing, we make games that nobody else makes. There's a book on that called Blue Ocean Strategy, which is about finding uncontested market space. So in our case, the year is 2013, and Minecraft is hugely successful, and Don't Starve just created the entire genre of like survival games. So what if we made a game like Minecraft, but underwater, survival sandbox like Don't Starve, but with diving, right? In space on an alien planet and without guns, because in the US there was a horrible school shooting, and we felt like we shouldn't really make yet another game about shooting things. So that was the rough idea, and that seemed good. And we got an idea. We got 4 developers, so we started to prototype. This is our first prototype. This is literally how the game looked when we started, right? It was focused on vessel building, that in the middle is supposed to be a submarine. Players would build submarines out of blocky rooms and then drive them around to gather loot scattered across the ocean floor. We had this modular control scheme where players were supposed to work together, co-op, to pilot the subs, but it turns out that was super tedious. But the good thing was the feeling of being underwater, that was already there, right? The emotions were working, the gameplay was totally not working at all. So we iterated on that, and so for the second prototype, we tried to get rid of the tedious aspects. We centralized the controls. We also made the grid inside the submarine more granular to allow for a more modular ship construction, which allowed us to accommodate an art style without glass floors. You saw before those blocks had all like no floors. This looks more like an actual submarine. So playing the second prototype, we discovered that exploration, driving around and finding loot, is already much more exciting than building submarines, something we did not anticipate, right? So for the third prototype, we tried to make submarines more interesting. So we added flooding, so when you dive too deep or you drive it into things, you get a hull breach and water comes in. Flooding worked great. We discovered we can have tension. You feel like, oh God, I'm going to drown, what I'm going to do. We can have tension without violence. And we also discovered that fear and tension are compelling emotions and make players come back for more. So if you find something like that in your game, exploit it, right? Focus on that. We continued adding more and more gameplay, more crafting, a proper inventory system. You can see some quick slots down there. And then we switched from height map terrain to voxel-based terrain, which enabled us to put caves in the game, which were like really claustrophobic, and that just added to the tension of diving underwater and always fighting for oxygen. Eventually, we realized it's better to start with nothing and then work your way up. So we removed the submarine and added just this static, ugly room with a crafting station instead. So you walk up to the crafting station to build your first submarine, and players understand that intuitively, right? They understand that the inherent value of having a submarine in a game where there's literally just all water. We didn't have to make that a quest or a mission or anything. So what we discovered was that intrinsic rewards are more compelling than quests. Intrinsic rewards create true motivation for the player and make players come back for more. In summary, we learned a few things from those prototypes. We learned that we can add intrinsic rewards through a tech tree, tech progression, right? We have gating through oxygen management. We don't need like red door, red key kind of things. We have tension through flooding, and all those are really good things. We also learned that modular submarines with like modular controls are only good on paper and not really fun in the game. What was great about the prototypes were the sense of exploration, discovery, wonder, fear, and tension. Those are all feelings, right? So what I'm trying to tell you is aim for feelings first. When you make a game, when you make prototypes, try to get the feelings right. Everything else falls into place. Fun is not a feeling. We also learned that underwater survival works great for these intrinsic rewards, because it's inherently a hostile environment that you want to survive, right? Okay, so this is now the wrong slide again. I have to go back to the one that I was trying to show you earlier. This one. So, as you know, there are thousands of indie games out there, and our goal is to stand out in the sea of games. Our goal is to be the one in the middle, the spiky bubble, right? The spikes will alienate some players, but others will really love it. And we believe that making games for everyone is making games for no one. Nobody will really, you just will not get noticed. So we were thinking, what are our spikes, right? What are our core values? So our initial idea was an underwater sci-fi themed game, because we like sci-fi, and underwater seemed really uncontested, where the player designs and builds custom submarines, and they explore a procedurally generated world, and all that without guns. We thought that is what makes our games stand out, right? After the prototypes, we updated our spikes because we found out, okay, submarine building was no longer important. That's not fun. So instead, let's focus on an experiential core game about just experiencing the world, right? Discovering the world. In the meantime, our art director was very busy making concept art. And he drew coral reefs and lush biomes filled with wonder and peril and submarines. And that's all good. Our only problem was that our prototypes looked nothing like that at all. So the next question is, can we even achieve that look? Can we pull that off? So we decided to make a proof of concept, literally proof of concept art in this case. And our new goal is to match the concept art as fast as possible. Forget about procedural terrain, forget about co-op, forget about gameplay. Just match the look of the concept art. That was our goal. We set our target to be PAX East, April 2014. And we quickly realized that if we want to pull off that kind of look, we need a lot of art assets, level design. So we added a lot of artists to the team. Our team size grew quickly. Fast forward to PAX, we made it. This is the Subnautica booth. People playing it. Players said the game has beautiful graphics, that's in-game, an intriguing concept, and we even had the submarine in there, and players could drive it, but it was kind of lame because really there was no gameplay. It was just you swim around, kind of like Abzu. Abzu has more gameplay than we had then. But it was still a valuable lesson, right? We learned that we can match the beautiful concept art and that the game has potential. We learned that the tiny handmade world, this world here, handmade, everything placed by hand, is way more interesting than anything procedural we came up with before. And we spent a lot of time on trying to make a procedural world cool. So we also learned that thalassophobia, the fear of the vast emptiness of the sea, and bathyphobia, the fear of depth, are really strong real-world emotions that just transfer into the game world. Like, people would just not want to play our game because they are afraid of water. We also learned that we have a serious performance problem because we had pretty beefy PCs there and still low FPS and really bad hitching. But we really liked the new look. So what do? Well, let's first update our spikes. No procedural world anymore. That's never going to look as good as we want it to look. Handcraft everything. But people fear the ocean, right? They really have a reaction to it. So let's exploit that. That's a good thing. Makes the game interesting, makes the game stand out. We're confident enough in the potential of our game to move forward. It was time to build our minimum viable product. Forget about our initial plans about like casual game on phones and tablets, and it's difficult enough to get this running on PC. Keep the look, bring back the gameplay, bring back the loot and the crafting, focus on single player first, and add a lot more world to explore. That will require better level design tools, voxel editing tools, right, and more level designers and programmers. So again, our team grew. Half a year later, October 2014, we had about 4 biomes. We had some creatures, some crafting, still no submarines because we were redoing the Cyclops submarine that you saw because it was so lame. So basically, we had the combination of the gameplay prototypes that you saw previously and the visual proof of concept. And we felt ready for player feedback. That's something I want to give to you as well. Get feedback from real players as soon as possible. I would even say that we did it too late, but it was still early on. So as soon as possible, as early as possible, and all the time, get feedback from real players. Anyway, so for us, we started selling the game on our website, and we were calling that earliest access. We also added telemetry and feedback systems to the game to get data on what players are actually doing. For example, there was a thing in the game where you press F8 and a little form pops up and you can send us a message and it goes to our server. That was super helpful. So this is the top-down view of the world. The yellow part is the fraction we had built so far. We had a long way to go. The game was centered around the live pod, and you see there in the middle, which contains the initial crafting station in the box that I showed before, right? It just looks better, but it's essentially the box. But we quickly realized players always wanted to swim to that big crash ship on the horizon. We called it the Aurora, even though that's just a billboard, and there's literally nothing there. But players are so unfamiliar with a game that is all water that they just aim for land, right? Aim for something that they can see on the horizon. That was the only thing on the horizon. So we learned that the Aurora, as the only visible landmark above water, attracts players. And players intuitively want to seek shelter or scavenge resources, or I don't know what they want there. The thing is on fire. So we added radiation around the Aurora, which ramps up as you get closer to shoot players away, right? And after that, we saw that players stayed in the shallow waters where it's safe, and they wanted to stay there as much as possible and avoid all the sharks and avoid all the caves and everything where you can die. So we thought we were particularly clever, and we just put all the good loot in those dangerous places, right? That's clever game design. Yay us. So the game we saw in front of us was already quite different from the game we had initially imagined. I hope you see the transition here. We're not really making a true sandbox game anymore. We're not making a building game or a survival game, really. Like, our new pitch is that we are building a game where you feel like a scientist who has crash landed on this aquatic alien world and it has to figure out how it works. And we didn't really know what the goal of the game is, but it's a game about exploration, about discovery and theme. Game without a specific goal, maybe. A game without extrinsic rewards. Game without combat and weapons. So let's, for the lack of a better term, let's call that an adventure game, right? Not really happy with that title, but let's call it that. 2 months after we started selling the game on our website, we ran out of money. So we had to do something. We put the game on Steam Early Access, hoping that more people would actually buy it. That was December 2014. The game was in a similar state as 2 months before, but because we put all the good loot in where the sharks were, there was a lot of exciting tension, and it felt more like gamey, right? And we also added this giant whale-like creature called the reefback. In terms of gameplay, they don't do anything. They just swim around and make cool noises. But players were completely freaked out by them. Like, they wouldn't even go close to them because who knows what they can do, right? So we discovered a new spike. Giant creatures are terrifying. Let's add more of that. With all this tension and fear going on, players started telling us that we are making a horror game. But the sales were really underwhelming, not enough for us to survive. We needed to move the needle, and we needed it fast. And we were really wondering, like, what would it be? How do we make this game more compelling? Would it be like more loot, more biomes, more dangerous creatures, multiplayer, bug fixes, something entirely new? Like, what should we prioritize in this dire situation? Because we're really in front of running out of business. So we looked at our spikes on what makes this game stand out. Underwater, accidental horror, and theme. We decided to implement only clear-cut features which add to those kind of spikes. Features have to be concrete, emotional, and straightforward, and they have to match with these spikes. Cut everything else. Cut all your fancy dreams. That was tough, but it was important to do. We kept our heads up and shipped monthly updates. We added more everything, but in addition to that, we added important headliner features for each update, like the Cyclops submarine, which we brought back, and the deadly Reaper Leviathan. And in terms of sales, we started to gain traction. Players loved the new Cyclops. It acts as a massive mobile base, and it gels well with exploration. So we discovered a new spike. And then we started seeing new players pouring in every day, all of a sudden. Where did they come from? Well, just one word for you: streamers. If you make a game for, I don't know about mobile, but if you make a game for PC and consoles, streamers is what makes all the difference. First, there was Eat My Diction as early as December 2014 when we just launched. And he had like 500,000 subscribers. And we saw a little bump in our sales. And then came Frankie on PC, March 2015, 2 million subscribers. And we saw a little bump in our sales. And then 2 months later came Jacksepticeye with 4 million subscribers. And we saw a bump in our sales. And Jacksepticeye made a new video about Subnautica every single week. Like, that was so much publicity we got out of just this single guy. Amazing. And then eventually, Markiplier jumped on it, and he had like 10 million subscribers. And we were good, right? We were golden by that time. These subscribers turn into buyers for your game. So with all those new players coming in, we went straight from near bankruptcy to infinite budget, because more money was coming in every month than we were spending on making the game. That was great, but it was also very scary, because what do you do from all of this? Are you going to develop this game for the next 20 years of your life? Where do you go from there? And can you keep up the pace? So we made a roadmap. We wanted to keep our pace, focus on delivering great monthly updates. We looked at our concept art. We picked the things that gelled most with existing systems. One of those was base building, which provides great intrinsic rewards. People love just making their home, right? In addition to that, it comes with farming, which gels with survival gameplay, and a moon pool, where you can dock your vehicles into, gels with vehicle gameplay. And a map room to scan loot, which gels with exploration. So it just ties in with all the systems that were good about this game. And we also finally caved and replaced the Aurora billboard with a proper 3D model and made it explorable inside. Because despite the radiation and all that, players still always just wanted to go there and find something cool there. It's a massive ship, right? It's more than 1 kilometer in size. So we knew that they want to go there. We knew the game they want, so why not just make the game they want? Give them what they want. Of course, we also fleshed out our existing systems, which we knew were working. So more creatures, more crafting, more biomes. And one of them was floating islands. So they were above the water, floating on the surface. To avoid the same fiasco we had with the Aurora, we hid the islands behind clouds, because we knew if we put islands in the game, new players would just go to the islands. And on the way would get killed, because there's Reapers. But then, so we hid them with clouds, and that worked great. Everyone was happy. Everything else, we cut. All our ambitious dreams for like really interesting creature gameplay and emergent food chains and virtual ecosystems, and cut all that. Our idea of terraforming the terrain and building habitations to make the planet ready for colonization or something like that, cut. Co-op, multiplayer, cut. Lots of other cosmetic stuff, all cut. We were telling ourselves that we can bring back these things to the table later if time allows. Time never allows. What we did end up with, though, was a really solid tech progression, allowing to explore deeper and deeper biomes, leading to better and better loot. You see, it's really tiny, but the biomes are on the left side, and it's roughly, as time goes down, you also dive deeper down. And then there's a tech progression tree in the middle. And it all just progresses very nicely. And the pacing was there, even though we didn't really have any sorts of gating, right? At least not hard gating. So the sense of exploration and discovery, those were really the most important things, the most important feature. The sense of the unknown. We learned that in our case, in our specific case for this game, getting lost and a little bit of frustration is actually a good thing. If we had added forms of hand-holding, it would totally destroy the sense of the unknown, because clearly the game designer at least knows what's good for you as a player, right? The same goes for trailblazing, which means like you mark your way so you can find it when you go back. It's better to empower players to leave navigation markers in the world than simply handing them a map. Because if you give them a map, they play the map, they don't play the game. But surely you want to guide, you have to put a little bit guidance in there if players get like totally lost and stuck. So we found that we can do that through clever tech progression, some soft gating around like how deep you can dive, creating a truly non-linear experience that doesn't feel like totally random. It still has a thread to it, a story to it. We don't have to put explicit missions or hard gates in the game to control what's going on. So that's great. I can recommend that. We also learned that in our case, it's best to build the world first, without thinking about the gameplay, without thinking about the pacing, and without thinking about the loot balance too much. The world just is. Everything else we can design around that. Again, that's completely opposite to what you usually hear. Right? Usually you hear, okay, you design your mechanics, your gameplay, and then you build a world that kind of looks a certain way, but just fits to your gameplay. In our case, because it is about the world, it is about the unknown, it was important to untangle that and to just build the world first. So the game was great. We had this cool survival sandbox exploration adventure that starts with nothing but a small life pod, and then branches out and goes wider and wider and deeper. But then what? What is the point of all of this? Is there a point, or is this Minecraft? And we discussed many different solutions, but the one that stuck out was a chart from the very early days of prototyping. Our technical artist had doodled something that intrigued us. It was this epic chart of exploring deeper and deeper parts of the ocean, descending into caves, and eventually aliens. Right? We realized that what we really need is a core narrative to pull everything together, a story. So we hired a writer, and he came up with a whole bunch of mysteries, including aliens, and a story that eventually led to building a rocket and escaping the planet. And that brought the entire game back together. It all made sense now. The story was the last missing piece. To tell the story in a truly non-linear fashion, we came up with a story gold system, which monitors the player's progress, what items they have, what biomes they visited, and hands out piecemeal story bits through the PDA or the radio or stuff you find in the world. And so you kind of discover the story as you discover the game. That's the last line over there. The rest is the same. So 4 years after we started, we finally knew what game we're actually making. At that point, we just had to finish it, just had to make it the other 90%, right? So we consciously cut everything which wasn't core to the game we were making. and this time for real. After 5 years of development, and 3 of them in early access, the game was done. We had held back the blast-off sequence of the rocket for our final patch, and we held our launch event at the Monterey Bay Aquarium in California, live streamed the launch event on Twitch, and then we went on vacation knowing that we had made it. That was great. Before I finish my talk, let me give you a quick tour through our tools and methods. There should be some interesting stuff in there. So we are a team of 25 developers, or we became a team of 25 developers, almost all working from home, remotely across 4 continents, lots and lots of time zones. We have no product manager, no producer. We share those responsibilities as a team. We use HipChat to talk and TeamSpeak for our meetings. We have 2 stand-up meetings each week and then breakout meetings. We use Plastic SCM as a version control system. It's pretty solid and it has a great UI for branching and merging. Even non-technical people get it. We use Jenkins in our build server to automate the build process. Please automate your build processes. Please do. It saves you so much time. And we're also using Jenkins to run automated tests. Please run automated tests. We work in the open. Everything we do is public. Meaning, not only do we have a blog and a Twitter and a newsletter and a headliner website for each monthly update, we also made our Trello board with all our day-to-day tasks public. Our commit messages are public, so people can see live what we are working on. In fact, people can play live what we are working on because we are automatically uploading daily builds to Steam where they are available on the experimental branch. And it's a broken mess, and they love it. Most importantly, it keeps us honest and grounded because if you break something, there are 10,000 people angry at you. So it's really easy to put some pressure on fixing bugs and having a stable, high-quality product if you are out in the open. And you know where you stand and whether people are actually responding to the things that you build or whether you cannot just have a crazy game designer plan and then it turns out it's not working in practice. One thing about early access, there's nothing more important than community management, to manage the expectations during that time. Of course, we maintain and we moderate our own forums, our Steam forums, our Reddit, not really our Reddit, but the Subnautica Reddit. But we also have a public Discord server where people can chat with us directly, like our devs are on there, or message us on Twitter. The most powerful feature, however, is the feedback reporting system we built into the game. Players can press F8, which pauses the game, takes a screenshot, and then pops up a little box where they can write us a feedback ticket, right? And the feedback tickets are going to our server. They are live and public. Everyone can read them. We aggregate them. We analyze them. If something breaks, we notice it immediately. The feedback tickets also go directly into our team chat. We can reply to a ticket there, enabling us to talk back to the person who sent it and ask more questions if it's unclear. Enabling true two-way communication with your players. Finally, one word about marketing, or rather the lack of it. Our marketing budget was 0. We didn't do anything, right? These days, your most powerful marketing tools are streamers and other influencers. And then the Steam front page. If you get to the Steam front page, you will see a spike in your sales. And social media, and lastly, press. We don't really believe in publishers or ads too much. So let's wrap it up. If you want to build great games, we recommend building prototypes, defining your spikes, and then building a proof of concept and get feedback early and often on it. And then you iterate, iterate, iterate. Execution matters. There's plenty of great ideas, but it takes a great team to execute on those ideas and make a good game great. Listen to your game, listen to what it wants to tell you, and adapt. It's probably not what you had planned, but it's better than what you had planned. Right? Listen to your players and deliver what they want, because when they tell you they want that, give them that, unless it clashes fundamentally with your vision, right? Like people were always asking us for like a harpoon or a gun or something. That clashes fundamentally with our vision, and it would destroy the sense of like you are not the biggest fish in the sea. So it's not a good idea. Or players are constantly asking us for a map. It's not a good idea because then it's not an exploration game anymore. But if they ask you, if they tell you something that they want and it does not clash with your vision, then give them what they want. And in case it clashes with your vision, listen to your instincts, of course. Like I said, Subnautica slowly gained traction and became a successful product over a long, long period of time. We believe in being open, building communities around our games, and that's how we grow our products. Never forget, early access is a show, and you will face a lot of backlash, a lot of negativity. You need your community to support and defend you because you cannot defend yourself. That just looks silly. You just keep quiet. And finally, ship, updates. So that's my talk. What will you make? Thanks for listening. Do we have time for questions?
We have lots of time.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is that before you put the game out on earliest access on your website, what was your primary source of feedback? What kind of players were you reaching out to test your game out or test your early prototypes out?
I see. So the question is what kind of like closed play testing we did, or what kind of target audience we had in mind?
Sort of. So where I'm coming from is that while, especially at the initial stage of development, when we want to reach out for feedback, a lot of the people who would actually be interested are other game developers.
Yes.
So is that like a big part of that early process? Because there's also this view that maybe you should first show it to players before going out to other game developers.
Right. So getting feedback from other game developers is great because they already have a very informed kind of mindset and they can probably articulate their feedback very clearly. Getting feedback from your own team is great because not only do they tell you what they think doesn't work, but you can also get a sense of what they are interested in working on, and that is very important. You have to have the right game for your team, and you have to have the right team for your game, so it kind of goes hand in hand. But all that said, if you want to make money, you have to ask the people who will give you the money for their opinion, right? So it's really much better to get real players to play your game and get feedback on that. We didn't do that. We basically didn't do that before we started selling our game on early access. I think I would do that differently this next time around. In fact, we are building a follow-up project, and we are showing it to what we call friends and family. But those are not game developers; those are real people, right?
Who play games in their people.
All kinds of people, really. Because sure, there is some sort of target audience, and there is some sort of Steam has is attractive to certain people, 20-somethings, right? But the games that we want to make should be inclusive and should really be simple enough for your mom to play, right? And so we didn't really want to focus narrowly on a specific audience.
Hey, you mentioned open development, and I was wondering, are there any particular parts of the development process that the community is more attracted to? Like, let's say, screenshots do better compared to commit messages?
I see. So the thing that gets the most attraction is the actual game, right? The actual game that you can play every single day. And I said Jacksepticeye was making a new video every week. He could do that because the game changed every week. So he started with running through the content that we had, and then he made some more videos with about the content that was added in the meantime as he was playing it. And that created a story, right? That got a snowball rolling. So I think it's more about the frequency and about the fact that you are making progress than it is about what that progress is or how you present that progress. Really, the best stories that were told about our game did not come from us, did not come from like our marketing or what we sent out into the world or like the screenshots that we thought was cool, right? The best stuff always comes from the community. I have, I'm not sure if I have one slide right in the beginning where one of our Twitch streamers, but not our Twitch streamer, but one Twitch streamer was playing the game and he was sitting there and he was basically talking to his audience while playing the game, and he was saying like, it would be really cool if Subnautica had like some way to measure how long ago it was that the last spectacle happened, and then maybe it's time for a new spectacle to happen. And as he said that, like a telepathic message pops up in the middle of his screen, and it's like, "What are you?" And he's baffled. And that is our best clip on YouTube, or our best clip on stream. That was a complete accident. We did not press any button or something, right? These kind of things that go viral and are super powerful, they only happen if you are out there and if you're continuously out there and deliver, and get more and more people interacting with your game.
You said that you're getting a lot of feedback just through the game. Like you could, players could screenshot something, add feedback, and it gets updated immediately onto your chat feed.
Right.
When you were spiking with player bases, did that ever become more of a hindrance? Like were you getting too many bits of feedback?
Yeah. We are getting a feedback ticket every couple of seconds. Every couple of seconds, because we have so many people playing the game. There's no way, at some point, there was no way for us anymore to manually read all that stuff, right? But this is text. We are clever engineers. We can process text, aggregate text, look for patterns in text automatically. So we just dump it into a database, and then we have a system that looks for words that come up more or trends that emerge out of that, and we see very quickly when some word combination becomes trending, and then we look at it, and a lot of people tell us, oh, they cannot dock their Seamoth into their Cyclops anymore, right? And so at some point, yes, feedback became overwhelming, but it's still valuable, and you can still aggregate it and get real knowledge out of it. So it became more of a analytics kind of thing, telemetry. But yeah. Questions in the back?
Yeah, so you were focusing on iterative development where you get feedback and then you go back and you fix your game or improve your game, right? So, and then you are constantly talking about constantly updating your core spikes or pillars. So I was wondering what's your thought process, and how do you decide that this particular feature or mechanic is a core pillar or something? Is it purely based on the feedback and the player response, or do you have a different intuition?
Yeah, yes. Pretty much. I mean, of our spikes that we ended up with, there was, if you compare the spikes in the beginning, like this, with what we had in the end, the only two things that remain were this one because we like it, and we think it's an uncontested market, and this one because this was very important to us, so we were not willing to compromise on it, right? And everything else, all the other spikes, did not come from us. They came from listening to our game and seeing what the game wants to be and what our players want the game to be. In fact, if you make a game behind closed doors, your game can only be so good as your team can think, right? But if you make a game out in the open, your game can be so good as basically the hive mind of everyone who is playing or developing the game, which is much, much better than what we could come up ourselves. And I think that is really the key to our success. That is why Subnautica is the game we eventually launched. That was not our idea. That was us listening to the greater community. Oh, how did we so the question was, how did we, when we saw something was good, did we add it to the spikes or did we not add it to the spikes? There's a bit of designer intuition to it, right? Like you want to look at the big picture and how much it gels with all the other things you have in the game. But you pretty much know right away when something is really, when something grabs people's emotions, then it's a spike right away. Emotions are the number one definer, I would say, because that's what makes people excited about the game and want to play the game. Yeah, sorry.
So is it a good idea to change the original game idea we had the first? Like in the course of time, Subnautica has changed from the original concept to something we have right now. So I'm making a game, something like a super hard platformer, like a super Meat Boy. So is it good to change the game over the time, which is suited for players, or should I stick on the original idea I had in the first?
Right. So I realized that as I'm giving this talk to more and more people, that not everyone is in the situation where they even can change the original pitch, right? Because maybe you have pitched that idea to a publisher and they give you money for it, right? And now the publisher wants to see the game that you promised them. So maybe it's not as easy to change the game, but every successful indie I've talked to, especially those who just made like Game of the Year nominees like Dead Cells and Into the Breach and Clay, they always make good games, right? And Celeste was a super good game. All of them will tell you that it is better to make the game that wants to come out than it is to make the game that you wanted to make initially. You just need to get feedback from the people who will give you money for the game, right? The feedback from players that you want to sell the game to. So in your case, you have a super hard platform. What are people saying about it, right? Do they love it, or do they find it kind of like boring? Is it the same as something they saw, or like what makes your game stand out? Find that and ask your players what really is important for them, and then iterate on that, I would say. Other questions? Oh, so many questions. Great.
I actually wanted to ask you, like, what were your initial motivations to go for a procedurally generated world?
Yeah.
And what were some of the specific reasons that world didn't work out? Like, was it just too dull, or yeah?
Yeah. So the reason why we thought it was a good idea was because we only had 4 people, and we wanted a big world that you can explore, and we knew that we just didn't have the manpower to build that world. So procedural generation, everything is free, and then you realize everything is shit. It's free, but it's also really not great. So excuse the language. So when we saw what we can do by hand, and we saw that compared to what we came up procedurally, it was pretty clear that procedural is never gonna reach any kind of quality standard that we want. So that's really when we change. However, I will say this. I'm a firm believer in great tools, and great tools can have procedural aspects in them, right? But it has to be a human steering the process. It has to be someone with an artistic mind who is using it, and then your tool can procedurally fill in the tedious work. Nobody likes to do tedious work. It's a great idea to spend some programming time on making your tools better, automate more, and get the tedium out of creative jobs. And there's so much you can do with that. Textures, models, terrain, like this. If you build great tools, you can really empower your artists, and they will love you forever. So I don't believe in pure proceduralism anymore, but I'm a firm believer in like a mix in the middle where you don't have to handcraft everything, but like the tedious stuff, the procedural thing makes it, and then the artist makes really the broad decisions and carries the vision.
More questions?
I would like to say one thing before you ask a question. I was asked to give a second talk tomorrow at the Unite. It will not be the same talk you heard today. It will be about open world streaming in Unity, how to achieve all this technically speaking. So if you're a programmer, if you're interested in that kind of stuff, I will explain that tomorrow. It will touch on a wide range of things.
And if you have an IGDC pass, you can access Unite. So just
right, yeah. All of you can go there.
You can access the talk with your existing IGDC pass.
Right. Last question.
Yeah, sure. My question is about automation. What are the things in Subnautica you have used to automate? What are the major parts? Like something which is very tedious for a person to do every day?
Yeah.
Are there some kind of things like that?
Yeah.
Just wanted to know that.
Thank you. This is probably my favorite question because I'm an automation engineer, so that's my jam, and that, yeah, I have some bonus slides, tips and tricks. You can automate. So we built it in Unity. So what I'm going to say is more Unity specific, right? But you can automate pretty much everything. You can automate unit tests, integration tests. You can automate static analysis on your code. You can. Does this look familiar to anyone? There's a broken reference to a material. You can automatically check for broken references in your project. You can run a script over all your assets and find that. This is the script. You don't write that down. I will publish the slides after this. Right? You can go beyond that and programmatically verify that all the fields, like these fields over there, they have values. We use an attribute there, and then we programmatically check that those fields have been assigned with a value, and that value is valid. And I also have the code for that. Like you can verify a lot of assertions about your assets and about your code, and you can, because if you have a big project with like 25 people, stuff breaks all the time, and we want to ship every single day. So automate. Every time something breaks, think about whether you can automate a test that prevents this class of breaks, of this class of bugs to ever happen again. And if you do that, your product gets more and more stable, and your tests become more and more covering your development, right? And it's not just about code, it's also about assets, because assets can break lots of things. So if you're really interested in this, just have a look at my slides. I don't want to go over time here. You can automate so many things, so many checks to get, again, the tedious stuff out of your development process. The earlier you spot a bug, the easier it is to fix.